possibly one per half, and that these are kept if reviews are successful. The big distinction, as far as I'm aware, is that when requesting a review, players must specify the exact offence and offender that they would like reviewing, and that decisions cannot be overturned for other infringements that may be picked up in the review process. For example, in a rugby context, a player could request a review for a knock-on in the act of scoring a try. If the player were found to have not knocked on, but to have actually been offside in the build-up to the try would still be given, as the knock-on was the reason the referral was asked for. The system works really well in what is a fast-paced game, and the video umpire is only looking at one particular aspect, rather than having to go back through a whole attacking phase. That said, I'm relatively happy with the new system in place in Rugby League at the moment, but there's always time to learn from other sports. Thanks for the great show, as always, Mike.
I think that's definitely a good point, and that would make it sort of speed it up. But could you imagine just how would they do it? Would it be the coaches that would do it, or would it be the on-field players that would be doing it?
I had to think back, because I only ever watch hockey in the Olympics, and that's the only existence hockey gets it in my life. So I don't know if you're more familiar with hockey or not. And
I did play a little bit when I was at sixth form. I played a little bit, but obviously we never had video cameras or sometimes matching kit, so it wasn't really too much of a problem. But if I'd thought about this, I could have asked someone I know who is much more keen in hockey. In fact, I have got tickets to the hockey when it's down at the London Olympic thing for the World Cup in June, July, that sort of time. So I did get a couple of tickets.
You might be able to see how it works there. Because that should be the level that of play.
They would have it, yeah.
But I remember in the Olympics there was a lot of it's hit the foot sort of is basically the main sort of appeal that happens, and I think it does come from on the playing field. I'm not sure if it comes from any player or the captain. I can't remember that part. It might be that any player can call for it, but then the captain have to confirm, or I'm not sure. But yeah, it is a quicker paced game than the other games we spoke about last week, like cricket and American football, in terms of
and
it's
there's
a
lot less
constant
breaks.
game, and it's the ball. I suppose the play does stop quite a lot, because every single 20 seconds it seems to hit someone's foot. But yeah, it is a motion, a full motion game.
Yeah.
They don't pause for long, and they're not like natural breaks in play, other than really the long corners, the short corners, sorry, which is what people are trying to win when they make these referrals usually.
Yeah, and it's the quick breaks where they're putting on their face masks or something like that. But even then, it's not that big. And I think having the offence targeted would stop a lot of what they end up talking about, because they do it to an extent where the ref on field now says, "Oh, I've got to try. Can you check X, Y?"
Yeah, they do that, but then they check everything.
But then
anyway.
they go and do everything. So you think, okay, we'll just limit it to what the ref tells us to check.
I've always
maybe it's the hybrid system of the two, that you keep it as it is, but you say if he asks on the field, I only ask you to check this and that, you only check this and that.
And like you'd have to say which player you think was obstructed, or like the third defender, or I don't know, whatever. But even it was down to sort of middle of the field or something. The team then making that challenge. I still feel like, I mean, no offense to hockey, because I do enjoy watching it in the Olympics, and it is quite a fast-paced, exciting game when the skill that they can do is something beyond me. I'd have a broken back, but the thing that I think is interesting there, though, is it's a lot smaller a sport, and it doesn't have so much money on it. For the players, I mean, there are full-time professionals or semi-professionals who are well paid to do it and stuff. I know a girl I went to college with is marrying a bloke who plays, and they moved to Holland for him to play for a proper club in Holland and stuff like that. So there's people making a wage out of it, but is it even as high profile as Rugby League is? It's not, is it? It doesn't get the mainstream coverage, the regular coverage, so we don't see the outcry. I wonder how much problems there are with the system since they brought it in, or whether it is just universally accepted. It'd be an interesting one If anyone else watches hockey,
might be one to follow up at some point after Magic Weekend.
Yeah, if
another one that's just got
people
me
can
thinking
tell
as well
us actually. People can get in touch if you watch hockey or anything like other sports that you think there's things to learn, because I do think that's an interesting one to throw into the mix. But we're not going to talk about it till after Magic Weekend. I'll put them on a sort of parked pile.
Yeah, because I'm just remembered actually they just approved it for video ref of some description for use in volleyball in the Champions League, so it might be worth. I might have a check out and see some of that.
But again,
see how they use it.
You play your point and then make your appeal.
You have got your break. Yeah, you have got a break in there. Although they are doing a lot now to make the transition between points a lot quicker. So they're talking about a new scoring system to try and limit the amount of time between points, because certainly teams where they've got bigger players, where they just come out and smack it, then they've got that extra advantage. But anyway, I could be going on about that for hours.
Yes, welcome along to Volleyball Champions League.
This week in volleyball, yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, we've got one more in from the listeners on the shout out and feedback section. It's from Mark, our friend at Wilco2205, and he says, is there any stats on the amount or percentage of penalties kicked compared to previous seasons? It feels like teams are taking the two a lot more often this year, and he did dig into Huddersfield, the team he supports, numbers, and suggest that backs it up, that they're probably there's probably a couple more penalty goals kicked per game or attempted per game this year than last year.
Now he mentions it, I definitely do get that feeling as well. Just thinking back to the games I watched this season, it does feel, and both even at the League One level as well, it definitely feels like there is more of an emphasis on taking it. And I don't know if that is a sign of closer defences. Is it to do with the weather? Yeah,
these are the things. And is it just like it always happens at this time of the year, but by the end of the year we forget?
It levels out. Yeah.
Well, I've not done that level of. I've not had the time to go into it all to make a like-for-like season so far, sort of after 6 rounds, say comparison, and say whether it's normal or not for more penalty goal shots to be taken in the opening rounds of a season or what have you. But in terms of the big overall numbers, I have managed to work out some numbers. So last year, it appears about 14% of all goal attempts were penalty goals, as opposed to 86% would have been conversion attempts. Whereas so far this year, about 20% of all goals attempted have been penalty goals rather than conversion attempts. It's a bit crude because I don't know about any games where someone might have passed up on a conversion attempt, for example, because that is allowed in the rules, but I can't remember it ever happening in recent memory. But there might have been one at a game I didn't see or something like that. That skews those numbers a little bit.
I vaguely remember one or 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, Phil Clark talks about it regularly.
Right towards the end of the game, it was actually I did almost wonder if Leeds were going to do it on Friday night.
Well, yeah. So it was 20% this year. So it's 20% so far this year. In 2016, it was 11%. In 2015, it was 8%. So that suggests there is a long-run trend towards increasing the amount of goals that are kicked as penalty goals rather than conversions, the percentage.
In terms of, so my next follow-up questions, which should just lead to more stats work for you, so you'll enjoy this. My next question would be, in terms of percentage of penalties overall, have we had more or less penalties in that time? So does it match? Does it, are we getting more penalties, therefore more of them are being taken? And my next question is, does that mean overall, where does that track against kicking statistics? So are kickers getting better, which then means they're more likely to take the 2 points because they know they're more likely to get it rather than try and run it?
I suppose we don't have anything on where the penalties are given and that sort of stuff. In terms of goal kicking percentage, it's remained relatively steady when I last looked at that. There's, it's regularly the case that there'll be one or two kickers above 85%, one or two kickers below 75%, and then the rest sort of in that middle range. So, and that's been the case for some time. So I don't necessarily think that's the case. One thing I have noticed is the amount of tries being scored over the last 4 years has decreased year on year as well. So
that. Those two together then point to defences getting better.
It does, yeah. So you're more willing to take the two because you think your defence
the
can
chance
hold out
of you
better,
getting...
and two, you might not have a chance to score a try or something. The other thing wrapped up in that though is, there's been a few games this year where teams have opted to take the 2, and it's really backfired on them because they've wasted attacking position when they've been in a good frame. Like Widnes did it against Wigan earlier in the season.
There was an example yesterday with Pilkington. They took 2 from the one, they then missed the kick, and then up the other end, Coventry then worked their way up the other end to score a couple of sets later. So it was, and to be honest, they really had the momentum at that point. So had they scored, it would have been quite a different outcome, I think.
Yeah, and it was the same with the Salford Widnes game as well. So that's an interesting one. But what Mark is thinking he's seeing, I definitely think is being seen, and it's a bit of a worrying trend that it's going up in a jump each year. I think it'll come down a bit this year from 20%, but whether it'll go all the way down to 14%, we're already a quarter of the way through the regular season. We'll follow that up at the end of the year, and in terms of whether more or less penalties are being given, I'll see if I can be bothered following that one up for you as well, Tim.
Well, next time Emma's out doing something exciting, you can sit there and pore over some spreadsheets.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing to mention in the shout-outs, Tim, is probably the biggest talking point of the week, and it's not really news because nothing's really confirmed. It's hearsay one way or the other, fake news one way or the other, or what have you. But it's about the hashtag Go to Denver, or the Denver the petition that Steve Mascord has set up on change.org for basically making the NRL sides release their players for the Denver test. Now, I'll get your take on it in a second, but just as an overview, obviously this test was booked in. They've started selling tickets and that sort of stuff for the match, but the NRL now are refusing to release their players. The Players Union in Australia are also refusing to sign up to these games, and all with the suggestion that the problem is it's not good for player welfare playing in the summer in high altitude. So, I mean, my immediate take is quit whining. There'll be a way to manage any sort of
to completely debunk the medical point. Let's get that out of the way first off. Number one, it's Denver. It's not the middle of nowhere. It's a major city which will be used to handling any sort of, the hospitals and whatever will have all the facilities you would need for that.
The stadium, also, it's an NFL stadium.
That's my second point. Medically. Yeah,
a lot of them have their own MRI machines and shit like that in them.
And is NFL, in terms of the injuries, is it any less dangerous? Of course not. It's exactly the same in terms of your medical protocol.
I think one thing that is different is our game is more continuous, but if you build in breaks at 20 minutes or what have you, or allow a little bit longer at scrums for players to regain the breath and stuff.
But I was more thinking from the impact injury, so your spinal injury or your leg break, which is going to be your bigger risk.
Oh yeah, no, they're no different. Aren't they?
They'll be exactly the same in both codes. If anything, from my experience from being on the sidelines, the American football injuries have always tended to be the worst ones. May have been the amateur level that I was first aiding for. But then, to bring on to the physiology kind of point, really, is it going to have, on these elite level athletes, is it going to have that much of an impact?
Well, I think if anything, the NRL teams should be glad that they're going to get players back better condition, because, a lot of clubs and sides and stuff in the past have gone on altitude training camps or in altitude altitude mimicking environments to increase sort of aerobic capacity and recovery times and things like that.
In rugby union, Wales went off a few years ago to somewhere in Poland to do some kind of altitude training where they locked them in pressurized rooms and did all that sort of thing. So it clearly has got a beneficial effect if it's done correctly. But the other thing is, if it was really a concern, if it was really a bit, as you say, you could either break the game into quarters as an extreme measure, or do you just allow 2 extra interchanges? Something, just something simple like that to just mean that the load, especially on the players, the bigger players doing the heavier physical load, is less.
Yeah, I'm honestly pushed back to the viewpoint that this issue is the NRL aren't getting any money out of it. Simple as that. they'll have been supporting it as long as they thought they were going to get some payoff from it, or they thought that the promoter was going to then chuck a load of money at them to take NRL regular season games next year to America and all that sort of stuff that they thought was going to be in the pipeline for